Imagine that you're listening to this at night, with the lights turned off, convinced that your reality is stable, solid, reliable. Now imagine that it isn't. That it never was. Everything began in such an insignificant way that, if I'm honest, I'm ashamed I overlooked it. Reality doesn't shatter with a scream or an explosion. It breaks like an old fingernail, with a nearly imperceptible snap one. You only hear when it's already too late. My job was to review forgotten material. Recordings no one ever claimed. Tapes left behind between moves. Unfinished inheritances. And offices that no longer exist. Home audios. Family videos. Police records that were discarded. Nothing glamorous. Nothing dangerous. At least, that's what I believed. I simply archived, catalogued, and listened. I observed other people's lives from a safe distance, until one night, a box appeared on my desk that wasn't listed in any record. It was old cardboard, damp at the corners, as if it had been buried. There was no sender, no stamps, just a folded note, written in dark, trembling ink. It read, "This really happened." There was no signature, no date, just that phrase so simple, so absurd that it made me smile at first. I thought someone was trying to mess with me. The first tape was an audio cassette. When I played it, I heard heavy breathing, far too close to the microphone. Then, a male voice began to speak, as if he were reading from a diary that should never have existed. He talked about waking up in unfamiliar rooms, clocks that showed impossible hours, shadows that seemed to watch him from corners where nothing should be. Stories like that come in all the time. But then, something happened that made me stop taking notes. The voice whispered a name. My name. My name. Not a similar name. Not a coincidence. My full name, pronounced with an intimate, personal inflection, as if it had known me forever. A chill ran down my spine. I rewound the tape. I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. But it said it again, over and over, each time closer. Each time lower, as if it didn't want anyone else to hear. I looked around the archive room. I was alone. Even so, I turned the volume down. That night, when I left the building, something felt different. The street was the same as always, but it seemed stretched, as if the distance between the streetlights had grown longer. I walked while counting my steps, a nervous habit I've had since childhood. I noticed that the sound of my footsteps didn't match my movements. The echo came too early, or too late, I wasn't sure. Something felt out of sync, like a badly synchronized video. When I reached my apartment, the door was slightly open. I remember thinking it was my mistake. I always looked for simple explanations. Inside, everything was too orderly. The crooked picture in the hallway was perfectly straight. The kitchen clock, which was always slow, showed the exact time. And then I saw the footprints. They were wet footprints on a dry floor. They led from the entrance to my bedroom. I stood completely still, listening. There was no one there. The footprints stopped right beside my bed, as if someone had lain down there and then evaporated. That night I dreamed that I woke up. In the dream, I got out of bed and walked to the bathroom. I looked into the mirror and saw my reflection with a slight delay. I smiled. The reflection didn't. I hit the glass. I felt the impact from the other side, as if my hands were trapped in there. When I truly woke up, my knuckles were bloody and the mirror was intact. The next day, I continued with the box. The second recording was a home video. A family sitting in a common living room, celebrating something trivial. A birthday, maybe. Everything seemed normal until I noticed there was one extra person. They didn't speak. They didn't move. They were always out of focus, too close to the camera. In every shot. When I paused the video and zoomed in, my stomach dropped. It was me, or something that looked far too much like me. I tried to rationalize it. I thought of edits, elaborate pranks. But with every tape I listened to, the real world felt less reliable. The neighbors repeated the same phrases day after day, with the exact same intonation. Television programs seemed to restart on their own, showing scenes I had already seen, but with slightly different dialogue, like poorly reconstructed memories. I began writing notes so I wouldn't telos myself, to remember who I was, what day it was, what things had changed. Until one night, I found a note written in my handwriting that I didn't remember making. It was taped to the wall, directly in front of my bed. It read, "Do not trust the one who wakes up." That same early morning, I heard a soft knock inside the walls. Then another, slow footsteps, as if someone were walking between the walls, testing where to break through. I turned off the lights. I sat on the bed without moving, holding my breath. The footsteps stopped in front of my room. Then I heard my own voice, on the other side of the door, whispering my name, asking me to open it, telling me everything was fine, that it just wanted to come in, that it had been waiting a long time. Listen carefully, because what comes next is no longer just about fear, but about understanding. There is an exact moment when terror stops being external and settles inside you, like an idea you can't stop thinking. For me, that moment came when I understood that the tapes were not simple recordings. They were cracks, windows, warnings that someone or something had deliberately left open. After that night, when I heard my own voice begging from the other side of the door, I stopped sleeping. Or maybe I slept without realizing it. Time began to behave strangely. I could spend hours sitting still, only to discover that the clock hadn't advanced a single minute. Or I would wake up thinking only seconds had passed, when in reality it was already night again. My body kept functioning, but my mind was out of sync, as if it were no longer synchronized with this side of reality. I went back to the box. I needed answers, even though I already suspected I wouldn't like them. The next tape showed a woman speaking in front of a fixed camera. Her eyes were red, her skin tight, as if she hadn't slept in days. She said she had noticed small errors in her house, photographs where people appeared whom she had never known, voice messages on her phone recorded in her own voice, but which she didn't remember sending. At the end of the video, the woman fell silent, staring at something behind the camera, and whispered that she was no longer alone inside her head. I stopped the playback when I noticed something in the reflection of her eyes. A silhouette unfamiliar. Every recording followed the same pattern. Ordinary people. Normal lives. They all began by noticing insignificant details. They all tried to ignore them. They all failed. And they all ended up understanding the same truth. Reality is not a fixed place. It is an agreement. A fragile consensus that holds as long as no one questions it too closely. The final recording had no recognizable format. It wasn't tape, nor digital file, nor conventional video. And yet, it played. The screen lit up, showing my apartment from an impossible angle, as if the camera were floating in the air, watching me. I saw myself sitting in front of the television, exactly as I was at that moment. Every movement of the version on the screen happened a few seconds before mine. I felt nauseous. A deep cold settled in my chest. In the recording, Madaba slowly turned his head and looked directly at the camera. Then his eyes shifted slightly and looked at me. He smiled. Not the way I smile. He smiled, like someone who learned how by watching. Then he began to speak. With my boys and with my foes, with my silences. He explained that there are things that exist between layers, entities that don't fully belong anywhere, things that cannot enter our reality unless they find a form, a mold, a willing reflection. He said that observing too much opens cracks, and that every crack is an invitation, that some realities defend themselves by replacing defective pieces without anyone noticing. I tried to turn off the television. The remote didn't respond. I stood up to unplug it, but my legs wouldn't obey. The image showed my double standing up and walking toward the apartment door. At that exact moment, I heard the doorknob turn in the real world. The door slowly opened, revealing a hallway that led nowhere familiar. It wasn't the building hallway. It was longer, darker. It seemed to breathe. My reflection stepped out of it. His feet walked across my floor, but the sound was wrong, as if each step happened somewhere different from where I saw it. He spoke to me, calmly, with a disturbing tenderness. He said, I was tired, that I had done my part, that not everyone is born to remain on the correct side of the crack. He explained that someone had to stay on the other side for the balance to hold. I wanted to scream. I couldn't. I wanted to run. I couldn't. I felt hands on my back, cold and firm, pushing me toward the impossible hallway. As I moved forward, my apartment began to distort. The walls stretched. The furniture melted into memories. I heard voices from the tapes, mixing together, repeating phrases I had already heard, names I recognized. Before falling completely into the darkness, I saw my double carefully close the door, like someone who doesn't want to make noise at night. He sat down in front of the television, took a breath, adjusted his posture, took over my life. Here, on the other side, time doesn't move forward. It only folds in on itself. I listen to recordings again and again, stories of others who notice the cracks before disappearing. Sometimes, when reality grows thin, I can slip into an audio, a forgotten video, a badly recorded whisper. I can say names. Warn, try to wake someone before they are chosen. And if you're listening to this now, if something in your world feels slightly out of place, if you've noticed small errors you can't explain, maybe you're already closer to this side than you think. Because reality doesn't break all at once. First it observes, then it learns, and when it's ready, it finds who will take your place.